Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Good to see everyone. Welcome everyone in the chat and any moderators and channel members out there. And to anyone that's listening to the replay, thanks for joining us. And if you're listening to it on audio only on Apple Podcast or Spotify, hello and welcome. A brand new Ryder Rangers channel members episode just dropped yesterday. It took me a while putting that one together, so I hope you really enjoy it. And if you're not a channel member, you can sign up. The link is in the description below. Help support the show. I didn't forget about you guys. Didn't forget about the channel members. I already have another channel members video in the works, and I'm going to be doing more of those in the future. So be looking forward to that. The sign up link is in the description. So you've heard of ghosts, paranormal activity, poltergeist activity, cattle mutilations, aliens, extraterrestrial abductions. But have you heard of alien phone calls? Well, this is the case of the Sudbrink family, the Sudbrick Phone Calls of 1993. Gary Sudbrink was an Air Force captain living in San Antonio, Texas. He flew to Long Island, New York to visit his friends and family. While there, he experienced many strange and unsettling phone calls on a landline of his father's home. This case is very intriguing and has doppelganger activity, UFO cases, and this alien phone calls. And here to discuss it with us is former DOD and U.S. Army military intelligence, security specialist, anti-terrorism, counterintelligence, Trey Hudson. Welcome back to the show. How's it going?
Hey, doing great. Doing great. Had a bad group of storms that moved through here this morning, but everybody survived, and we're doing good. I'm really looking forward to this one. Like I was telling you before the show, this is an enigma. This is going to be kind of tough to to wrap with a a nice bow and send it off to the easy to explain or easy to pass off as a misunderstanding or a misidentification. So this was really cool. So I appreciate you having me on today, and I think this is going to be a fun show.
Yeah, I was really intrigued by this. See, I follow this channel called Bedtime Stories, and I followed it for about 6 years now. I've been following it, and they have like a lot of weird and strange stories, and they put artwork. They make all the artwork, and then they tell the story through a narrator. And that's where I found a lot of really strange and weird stories. And I sent it to you, and I was like, "What do you think of this thing?" And that's what inspired the show today. And we also had done the Kamar Duban incident in Russia, which was also in 1993. And then we did the Stephen Kubacki episode of the guy that went missing and then reappeared. How long was it after that? Like 5 to 10 years? Was it 2 years? Yeah, it was a while. He disappeared and then he reappeared. And so now we're on this mysterious alien phone calls. Now, I had heard of, and we have some clips that we're going to play of the 3 phone calls that him and his family received. But I've heard of like paranormal phone calls before, of like ghosts, and sometimes they get warning from like ghosts and things like that. Like if a family member dies, they'll receive a phone call from that family member. I've heard of that, and that's really interesting. And also I've heard of like strange paranormal phone calls that will like warn them of something in the future, like the death of like a family member or death of a friend or some disaster. Had you heard of those before?
Yeah, actually I had. I went to the University of West Georgia and studied under Dr. William Roll. And one incident, Dr. Roll invited me to go with him to a kind of a very intimate kind of gathering of people in Atlanta. And one of the people there was Scott Rogo, who wrote the book Phone Calls from the Dead. And that goes into, my personal opinion, the paranormal, the UFO and all that, I think is all part of one thing. And so, Mr. Rogo wrote a lot about, people, as you talked about earlier, receiving phone calls from, deceased relatives or, people that were friends that had passed on, either recently or years and years and years ago. And this phenomena, isn't really that unusual. The idea of using a machine to communicate with the other side, the others, isn't new. It's the technical term for it is called instrumental transcommunication, and we can go all the way back to the Bible, where the Ark of the Covenant was built and was used as a communication device with God. It was a machine, and it had certain elements to it, and it had to be built in a certain way. And that actually was an instrument used to communicate with another dimension. So that was one of the first, written examples in the Talmud of, instrumental transcommunication. And then we move forward, here into the 21st century, and we have telephones, VCRs. I'm showing my age. Video.
I remember VCRs.
Yeah. Videos, and now computers. Everybody's heard of electronic voice phenomena, EVP. So, this is just another facet of using instrumentation to communicate with something else, something beyond our three-dimensional. John Keel called them ultra-terrestrials. I call them paradimensionals, but, communicating with something else.
Yeah, and I think it's important to set up this. So, as I mentioned, this gentleman, Gary Sudbrink, he lived in Antonio, Texas. He worked for the Air Force. He was an Air Force officer. And the strange part about it is like leading up to it. So in 1992, he decided to go to Long Island. He had this really strange encounter on this airplane where this guy was asking him all these questions, and he's in his military uniform, and this guy is basically not leaving him alone. And then he goes to his brother's reception in Long Island, New York. And whenever he gets there, he hadn't talked to his brother yet. And then when his brother came up to him, he was like, "Hey, like, that was really weird of you earlier. I saw you at a traffic light. You pulled up in your car and you were making like all these weird and strange faces at me. And then you just sped off." And Gary Sudbrink was like, "Well, that's impossible. That couldn't have been me because I flew in.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't my car. I don't have my car here with me. I flew into Long Island." And then that kind of plays a role later on with these phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
And the doppelganger aspect is really interesting as well.
Yeah, if I recall, when he was at the airport getting ready to go to Long Island, I think he was initially approached by somebody in the gate area with a spiral bound pad, and was asking him a whole lot of questions like, what's your name, where are you going? And said it was part of a survey. And then he got onto the plane, and there was an individual sitting in the seat across the aisle from him who had longish hair, was male, and likewise was asking him about, a lot of really personal questions. And the stewardess, said, "You're in somebody's seat. You need to move." So the strange long-haired guy moves like 2 rows back, still trying to strike up a conversation with Captain Sudbrink. And then the stewardess said, "No, you're way in the back of the airplane." So this, you have, two people, really kind of, picking at this guy, asking a lot of information. And the first thing that popped into me, in my mind, was, of course, old counterintelligence guy. I was thinking, could this be some sort of elicitation attempt, by either a test, to see if he would disclose information, or if it was, an elicitation from another country or something. And so I started digging a little bit back into Sudbrink, and he was a pharmacist. So while he may have some access to sensitive information, he wasn't really in the sensitive information business, unless, you getting your erythromycin is sensitive data. So it was really weird, and it kind of set the whole, the whole crux for this thing. They kind of set, lit the fuse of high strangeness for this. So it was, it started off with a bang. I mean, I started off with, some really, really weird stuff that kind of made my skin kind of creep out a little bit when I was reading about the airport encounters. And then, like you said, it only got worse when he landed there in New York and went and met with his family in Long Island.
And the really strange part about this is the second time that he goes back. So he goes back a year. He had a big break from being in the Air Force. He had like a little bit of a vacation. I think it was like a 4-day off thing. And when you're in the military, you're supposed to, well, from my understanding, you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but you're supposed to alert your officers and your superior officers and the people that you're leaving the state or if you're going out of town. So he decided not to let the Air Force know or his superior officers that he was going to go back to New York City. So nobody knew that he was leaving Texas to go back home to visit Long Island.
Right.
And whenever he gets to Long Island to visit with his father, they get this mysterious phone call. And I'm going to play the first phone call here and we can comment on it.
I'll tell you who it is.
Hello?
Yeah. Do you want to speak to him?
There's Gary's Sudbrink there.
Yeah, who's this? Steven? Are you playing games with me or what?
See, they initially think that this is like a prank, that they're being pranked, and at first glance, when you're first listening to this, you kind of like, oh, maybe this is like a prank, like one of those boards. I don't know if you remember, like it was really popular in like the early 2000s, where they would have like these boards that you could program voices into, and then you can call. But this is in '93. I don't think that a lot of people had that type of technology to pull like a prank like that, but I don't know. Let's keep listening.
Huh? Steven, if you're playing games, I'm going to kick your ass.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
Huh?
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Yeah, this is you, Steven, you idiot. You're pissing me off. Jerk. I'm going to get you on... Let's see what it says. Review. One new call out of area. Is Steven out of the area?
How long are you going to be back from Texas?
Wait, say that again?
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Wait, hold on. Is Steven out of the calling area or what? What do you mean you don't know? He's in Queens. Well, who are you talking? I don't know who the fuck.
Hello?
Hello?
Here's Gary's Sudbrink there.
Who is this? Sounds like a freaking robot.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
What was that again, sir?
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Oh, be quiet, Alpha. Sorry, would you see that again? Hello? I'm being impersonated by what voice?
Hello?
Yeah. Hello?
Here's Gary's Sudbrink there.
Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah, what is your question? I'll answer it.
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
How long?
You're being impersonated by the other voice.
Right. When am I coming back? Is that your question? Okay, there was a break. Hold on. You want to know when I'm coming back to Texas? Oh, is that your question?
So how long are you going to be back from Texas?
How long am I going to be back from Texas? That question doesn't make any sense.
By the other voice.
Okay. I'll be coming back eventually. I can't tell you when. You should know that question, the answer to the questions, because you seem to know more about me than I do. You know what I'm saying?
Are you an intergalactic person?
Are you a space alien?
Sounds like he hung up.
I can't believe this.
He hung up, Gary.
See if he comes back.
All right, I'll hang up.
So
Yeah.
that was the first call. Now, on first glance, like you're like, okay, this is some weird electronic voice, like, but it gets stranger as when the other two calls start to come in. But it seems like it's on like a repeating
Yeah.
like loop.
Well, there's like a tape loop. And what's interesting on this, and let me jump back a little bit. The part where the voice keeps saying, and I quote, "You are being impersonated by the other voice." What's really important here is while Captain Sudbrink was at his parents' home, he called a longtime friend named Mike, and he was talking to Mike, and he said, "Hey, I'm in town, and would you like to get together?" And Mike said, "No, you and I have already talked. You told me that you had flown into LaGuardia, and you and I spoke." And that was a little bit different because Sudbrick had actually flown into JFK. And his friend Mike said, "Look, let's not worry about getting together. You sound like you have a cold." The voice was off just a little bit. And while they were talking about this, because Gary did actually call, Mike later, and he says, "Hey, I just talked to you. This other, I just heard from you." While that call was going on, they had the actual, and I'm trying to remember, call forwarding beep come up. And back in the 90s, you had to actually hit the handset to go over to your other call. And then they switched over to the call with a strange voice asking if Gary Sudbrink was there. So it was weird that one of the things in that first conversation was that other voice, you're being impersonated by the other voice, which actually broke into a conversation where they were talking about that very thing. Now, it's not like it is now with the availability of cell phones and all that. It was all not all of it, but most of it was analog. And it's very hard to kind of pull these shenanigans unless you had some sort of in with the phone company, or had very, very advanced capabilities beyond what your average person would have.
Yeah, that's a really interesting aspect that his friend had heard from him earlier that day, and it sounded like he had a cold, because whenever Gary called his friend was essentially like, "You sound a lot better. You already sound like you're already better."
Right.
He was like shocked. He was like, "What do you mean? Like, I haven't talked to you. What's going on?" So that's the two instances of like some form of like doppelganger. So it was his brother that seen him
right
in 1992, and then in 93, whenever he's back home and he receives this strange call, his friend tells him that he had essentially heard from him earlier, but it didn't quite sound like him.
Yeah, and the doppelganger thing is, very ancient. The idea of a doppelganger or another you, once again, goes back folklorically. You hear about, like in Ireland, the Fae swapping out a baby, and you have like this doppelganger baby, and other people saying, "I saw another you, walking along the road, earlier." So, you're seeing this like very old concepts, of, instrumental transcommunication, communicating with devices, whether it be a sacred space, a machine or something, or the doppelganger. So it's hitting all of those check marks for high strangeness. And I'll be honest with you, just hearing that voice just kind of makes my skin crawl. I had a very similar experience with a voice like that calling me several years ago. And it just, it kind of, like I said, makes my skin crawl just a little bit.
Yeah. And it almost sounds like it's in like broken English a little bit. Like the person might not know the right exact words to put together to make a complete sentence, because it keeps asking, "When are you going to be back from Texas?"
Yeah,
and it should say, "When are you going to be going back to Texas?" Not "When are you going to be back from Texas?" Right.
Right. The syntax is odd, which is kind of weird, because if you go back and read, accounts of the Men in Black, that's one of the things people say is their syntax is very odd. Like they don't totally have a grasp of the language. And I kind of got that same sort of feeling with these, these audio recordings, is the speaker, be it biological, mechanical, or otherwise, does not have a total grasp of the, the subtle nuances of the English language.
Which I think kind of adds like credibility to the case, because if it was just like a strange weird like voice that was just speaking like regularly and was actually replying to the questions that they're asking. It almost sounds like it's on like a recorder
Right.
or it's being transferred from some other different
Right.
type of language. And the strange thing about it is the second phone call, it kind of feels like the voice is like powered down a little bit. Like the
Yes.
voice isn't as loud, it's not as enunciated. It's like it's dropping down in power. I don't know if that makes, I don't know really how to explain it, but it seems like that that if it is some kind of mechanical device, that it only has a limited amount of time to make its point and to get whatever it is that it's saying to this person. And after a certain period of time, it kind of loses power. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, kind of like it's losing juice. Kind of like you had the first phone call reminded me of like a tape player on a loop. That had first is Gary Sudbrink there, then when are you going to be back from Texas, or however that was phrased, and then then it just seems you're being impersonated by this other voice, and it just keeps saying the same thing over and over. And then later on, in the episode, you start getting a little bit more interaction, which I find interesting. But it does almost sound like a tape recorder starting to lose power, slow down, like that. But it is just really weird, just really weird.
All right, let's listen to the second phone call because it starts to spice up a little bit here.
Yeah.
Question? Yes.
Oh, and this was, I think, around 20 minutes after the first phone call.
Yeah, the first
I
phone
believe.
call was at 10:30, so that's 22:30 hours, and then this was at 23:10, 11:10 p.m. So just not that long afterwards.
Okay.
Speaking. Yes. Can I answer any questions for you?
Are you back from Texas?
Not back yet, no.
How long are you going to be back from Texas?
Let me answer. First, you tell me, where are you calling from?
This is Gary Sudbrink.
Yeah, why don't you tell me where you're calling from?
Who is this?
What do you mean, who is this? You should know who it is. It's me, Gary. Wait, let me ask you this question. Where are you calling from? Okay, I'll be back.
This is where it's getting interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Keep an eye on the skies.
Yeah. And it's something that I took note of because I have a transcript here, is this time when they said, is this Gary Sudbrink? In the first call, there was a stutter. Is this Gary Sudbrink? The second time, there is no stutter. And now we're starting to see a very similar phraseology, but they're actually different recordings. They're different instances of this voice speaking. So it's not like whoever is making this is just regenerating the same as this Gary Sudbrink. It sounds like it's actually a new voice, or a new variation of the voice this time. So that's kind of cool, and that adds a little bit of credibility to it. Because if I was going to just start, hammering them with the same questions, I wouldn't bother re-recording. Is this Gary Sudbrink? I would just use the same one before, but this one is distinctly different.
Yeah, and you would think too is like, well, maybe he wasn't getting it or understanding it the first time, so let's try and switch around a few words to make it more sensible to him.
Yeah, and it says, "Are you back from Texas?" And then of course, how long are you going to be back from Texas? Which is, what we heard in the first recording.
Yep.
Excuse me?
Near Orion.
I can't hear too well.
The full moon.
Yeah, there's a full moon out. That's true. Could you identify yourself? Identify yourself. Why are you calling me? Excuse me? I cannot hear too well.
Get on the other phone, it's better.
Hold on, let me switch phones. Okay. Okay, hold on. Now, who are you?
Keep an eye in the sky, he said.
Keep an eye in the sky?
Yeah.
That's what Kenny I talked to him.
Shh.
I had a sighting.
Okay, hold on. Say that. Repeat that again. Please repeat. Okay.
Near Orion.
Near Orion.
Holy mackerel. Tonight or guess when?
The full moon.
They told
So, double from you.
Repeat.
Tell him I like to talk to him.
Okay, repeat last word. I'm hearing static.
Tell him I like to talk to him.
He hung up.
He hung up.
Hello?
That one's super strange.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep
Keep
an
your-
eye on the sky near Orion, the full moon. What was the last one? Show
Yeah.
the double of you, I think.
Yeah, let's see. It is, let me find it here. Let's see. Keep an eye on the skies. Show double of you.
Show double of you. So this time we didn't get you're being impersonated by the other voice. We got a different version of that, which was show double of you.
Right. So now it's not just saying, there's a voice that sounds like you. Now it's implying that there's actually a double, that there's actually another Gary Sudbrink, doppelganger, out there somewhere, which would lend credence to, his brother Steven's story about seeing him on the road, prior to the wedding that they attended in 92.
Well, something that's kind of disclosed in this call is Gary's father, and his brother, which would be
Mhm.
Gary's
Uncle.
Yeah, they went to West Virginia to this observatory, and they supposedly had a UFO sighting. Now, apparently, Gary's father and his uncle are really big UFO enthusiasts. Like, they're like UFO researchers, and they like love
Right.
the phenomenon, which I thought was kind of interesting as well. And maybe that it's his father that is kind of pushing him toward the direction that maybe this is extraterrestrial or like an alien voice. I don't know.
Yeah, it was interesting that, one of the, right off the bat, they said, are you an intergalactic person? Which is, kind of an odd, turn of phrase there. And then, Gary's father, like you said, is interested in the UFO phenomena. They went to the Green Bank Observatory there in West Virginia, and had their own UFO sighting there. And then the father starts trying to link the two later on in the conversation. And what's something else that's really cool is the Long Island has a lot of really strange UFO type history. It's an area, especially a place called Mount Misery, and many of the people that had experiences back in the 60s at Mount Misery, Long Island, started having, strange phone calls and harassing things. And, John Keel even writes about it and breaks down, the different types of harassing phone calls, in his book. And also, in more detail in his notes. So, that area of Long Island, and I don't know exactly where the Sudbrinks were, but Long Island is not, inoculated from high strangeness in any way. And the strange phone call phenomena is not, that unusual for people that have had encounters with high strangeness. So that's a good, the linking the two, phenomena, the strange phone calls and the UFO sighting there at in West Virginia does make sense.
Yeah, I just don't know if Gary's father is trying to connect, because it doesn't seem like the voice wants to talk to Gary's father or to Gary's mother, which I'm assuming that it's his mother, but it might not be his mom that was on the first recording.
Right.
But I'm guessing that it's his mom. They seem to not be interested in talking with either of them. The only thing that the voice will say to those two is like, is this Gary Sudbrink or is Gary Sudbrink there? So it really only wants to communicate with Gary, and it might not have, I mean, it's interesting about the UFO experience that they had, but it might not even be connected whatsoever at all. And it might be only for Gary, like keep your eyes to the skies, near Orion, the full moon, which I think that in the third call, he mentions that there is going to be a full moon either that night or the next night.
Yeah. And so, looking at my notes here in the transcript is call number one lasted 3 minutes and 46 seconds. Call number two, which we just listened to, was 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And then call three, which I imagine we're going to hear in a little bit, is 3 minutes and 33 seconds. So about 3.5 minutes seems to be the length of time that whatever or whoever this caller is can actually function. And then for whatever reason, they terminate the communications of the phone call. So, and I'm, while we're listening, call number 4 is 3 minutes and 55 seconds. So, between 3:30, 3:50 seems to be the maximum that, that this entity or this person or this hoaxer or whatever you want to call it can communicate.
Yeah. And that's one of the other things is, they think that maybe it's, that it's his brother, Steven, but I think after they think that it's his brother, Steven, in the first call. And then after the other two calls, they're kind of like, I don't think this is Steven anymore.
Yeah. And I think even the mom on one of the phone calls comes in and says, that's not Steven. That is not, or maybe it's the father saying that is not Steven.
Yeah. It's, in connecting the UFO sighting as well, and supposedly in West Virginia, we don't have too much information about that, but someone asked, how did these people obtain this recording? Well, I found this on the channel Bedtime Stories, and Trey, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that they didn't release these for a really long time. Like they sat on them for a while.
Yeah. And they were recorded, back in that time. A lot of us had, and once again, I hate to show my age, is we had actual cassette voice recorders, answering machines. And one of the functions you could do is you could hit record. There was a button and it would record, what you were saying and what the other person was saying on the line. So for whatever reason, they decided to hit record, when these phone calls came in. And that's why we have these audio tapes today.
Yeah, and I don't believe that they wanted any type of fame or anything, because I don't think that they weren't released for a really long time. I think it was like, 15 to 20 years after it happened that they were released.
And keep in mind, Sudbrink in the military was a pharmacist, which is a highly technical position requiring a high degree of trust, because literally your pharmacist has your life in his or her hands, so, it wouldn't make sense for Sudbrink to be in on any kind of shenanigans, because it would just throw into question his reliability, trustworthiness, and otherwise, and ability to do the job. And then once he gets out of the military, from what little bit I did of research on him, is he continues to be a pharmacist, which when you're practicing in the civilian order requires a licensure from the state pharmacy board and wherever you're practicing. And I think he eventually went to Massachusetts and practiced for a while there. So, it would not be in Gary's best interest to be involved in anything that showed any impropriety or any lack of seriousness, and it certainly would not be in his best interest to show anything that seemed deceptive or dishonest. So that's another layer of credibility, in my personal opinion, that I'll lay on top, at least from Gary's perspective, lay on the top of this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of things that we've mentioned so far that lends a version of credibility to the calls and what this is. I mean, I'm in the third call, it seems more of like some kind of like warning, and I don't know. Let's just listen to the third call and we'll discuss after the third.
Okay. Yeah, it's taking time from the talk. Who is this? Stephen, this is not funny,
Brian, it's not Stephen.
What do you mean, Brian?
I mean, Gary.
How do I know it's not Stephen?
It's not Stephen. Hello? I had a UFO experience in West Virginia, which you probably know. And I know that you're into an intergalactic person. Can you speak a little louder? Sir? Can you speak a little louder? Louder?
Let me speak to him, Dad. I guess, I don't know.
All right, I'll hang up so you can talk to me. He wants to talk to you.
Okay. Hello, can I help you?
Hello.
Yes. Yes, that's me. Yes, could you please identify yourself? Identify.
Oh, you're back from Texas.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm in Texas right now. Oh, he asked me a question. No, I'm in New York right now. You know that. Why are you asking me such a question? Yes. Stephen, if this is you, I swear to God, I'm going to be pissed. Huh? I'm trying to listen to him. Excuse me? Okay. Eventually I'll be back from Texas. Could you speak more? Please speak more. I guess it's not Stephen. I believe it because I'm getting static. Let me go on this phone because I can never hear on this phone. Hold on. Okay. Okay, please speak. Hello?
Keep an eye on the sky.
Okay. Should I go out right now?
Right.
Right now?
The full moon.
Okay, see, I'm not sure where Orion is now, but we'll go outside.
Show double from here.
It would show double from me. Repeat that again?
So that was the third one. Gary, the entity or the whatever it is on the other side of the line does not want to talk to Gary's father or Gary's mother. It only wants to communicate with him. And I find that interesting. What do you think about this third phone call? You're muted.
Here we go. Sorry about that. It's a little bit more of the same, but we see this insistence, like you talked about, is wanting only to talk to Gary. You would think that the whole West Virginia UFO thing would be just ripe for further discourse, but it didn't want any of it. It wanted only to speak to Gary Sudbrick, and once again the same theme keeps repeating itself. Eye on the skies, full moon, and is this Gary Sudbrink? And then a almost pathological fixation on, are you back from Texas? Are you back from Texas? Wanting to actually pinpoint his whereabouts. So and it seemed like on this particular call, whatever it was really having a hard time communicating. It seemed very muted, like it was almost straining to keep that connection open, with Gary. And it seemed like it was, really having to expend some energy to talk. And then once again, we saw the theme of show double from you, which is a little bit different phraseology. And that goes back to the lack of maybe understanding English syntax, but trying to communicate that there is a double that you need to show or be aware of.
Was there a fourth call? Like, am I
Yes.
missing? There was a fourth one?
There's a fourth
Okay.
call that was actually the next day, and it lasted 3 minutes and 55 seconds. So, like I said, between 3.5 minutes to 3 minutes, 55-ish seconds. And this one was on Tuesday, February the 9th, 1993, and was at 10:21 p.m. So that's 22:21 hours, military.
Yeah, I didn't get that one
Oh.
clipped out. Oh man, that
Well,
sucks.
I
'Cause
mean,
I had remembered that it was talking about that the voice was saying it was government. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
it was. Oh,
Well,
man,
I've got the transcript here if you want me to read the transcript.
Yeah, if you can read it.
Yeah. Voice with more reverb and echo. Is Gary Sudbrink there? Gary, yes, it's me. Can I speak to? Can I ask why? Is Gary Sudbrink there? Yes, can I ask why you're calling? Followed by some static. Gary, can I please ask? Voice, is this Gary Sudbrink? Yes, this is. Gary Sudbrink? Yes, that's me. We come to be within this planet. Say that again. In this planet. Leave, says Gary. Voice, we come. Gary, I'm standing right here. Voice, to be within this planet. Gary, is this a joke or what? Then you hear like a strange kind of a whirring sound, like some sort of turbine spinning up or something. Voice, to visit the many, to be contacted as the same with you. Once again, that strange halting syntax is there. Gary, I have to think about that. I'd like to see you. Voice, to visit the many, to be contacted as the same with you. Then his uncle, who actually had the experience with Gary's dad in West Virginia, was there. And you can hear him say, hey, let me tell you something. I've been listening to you and I've had contacts with you. So it's Gary's uncle actually kind of indicating that maybe he had some sort of close encounter of the third kind or some sort of interaction previously with the others or the otherness. And then the voice says very faintly, you. And Gary says, you have? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. After Gary's uncle says, let me, I've had contact with you, the voice says, beware government interference.
Yes, that's what I remembered, yes.
And then Gary goes, government interference. And the voice says, you. And Gary says, you have? Please explain what type of interference. The voice says, beware. Okay. Government interference, visitations to be disrupted by them. Then the voice continues, very faintly appears. The sun will rise on dark side of moon world. No. The uncle says the sun will rise, and the voice makes some sort of low murmuring. The uncle says on the dark side of the moon, and Gary says, "Oh, okay." Then the voice, very low, very faint, says, "On the moon." Gary says, "What branch of government?" And then the voice, very low, once again, like it's running out of energy, says, "Show double from you." Gary says, What should I do?" The voice says, "Beware government interference, visitations to be disrupted by them." And then the call hangs up.
Yeah, that's a really weird one. I found it here. We're actually going to listen to it as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I'm just going straight from their YouTube channel on the Sudbrick Phone Calls on Bedtime Stories YouTube channel.
Yes, this is me. Can I speak to you? Can I ask why you're... Yes, can I ask why you're calling? Can I please ask... Yes, this is. Yes, that is me. Say that again?
This planet.
Leave?
We come
I'm staying right here.
to be within this planet.
Is this a joke or what?
That was a strange sound.
Yeah.
That's what you were talking about.
Yeah.
That,
turbine sound.
yeah. Like what people expect what a UFO hovering
Right.
would sound like, right?
Right.
The classic hovering sound. The whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah, like in War of the Worlds when they come up out of the the pit and are looking around at roar, roar, roar.
Yeah.
To many. To be contact. As the same with you.
I have to think about that.
There it is again.
Yeah.
The second time.
I'd like to see you.
To many. To be contact. As the same with you.
Hey, let me tell you something. I've been listening to you, and I've had contacts with you.
Government interference? You have? Please explain what type of interference.
Did you hear it again in the background that time too?
Yeah.
It's strange.
Okay.
Visitations to be disrupted by them. Appears. Sun will rise on dark side of world. No.
The sun will rise from the dark side of the moon.
Okay, what branch of the government? What should I do? Okay. Is that good for me or bad? They hung up.
Do you get time? Yeah.
So that was the fourth and final phone call. Sorry, I completely blanked on that one. Should have had it already cut out there. But yeah, government interference. That was a really interesting thing. Now, what's weird is that this is the fourth and final call. This is the only time that it seems like that they are, like, the voice on the other end of the line is kind of confirming that they are an extraterrestrial force, an alien, or some kind of other entity. But Gary, well, mainly his dad, has kind of placed that on them from the very first call. So it could be in some way that if it is a prankster, someone pranking them, they're just changing up their thing to fit what they already believe that it is. I don't know.
Yeah, basically parroting what they say. But another thing I found odd, along with the almost same amount of time, of the transcription, 3.5 minutes to 350, is the number of phrases per communication. Is the first one was 15 instances of the voice, 16 in the second, 15 in the third, and 17 in the fourth. So you're between 15 and 17 actual lines of the voice per call. So there's like a very distinct pattern, not only for time, but the number of times the voice speaks in each call. And now what the significance of that, I have no idea, but it's, it's very strange that there are these patterns that seems like they can only communicate for a certain period of time and only communicate a certain number of times per call.
Then it ends the call because it's ran out of juice for that amount of time. Or maybe it could be some kind of time limit that someone can track the call. Because I know, like, back in the day, for someone to be able to track the call, they had to have them on the phone for a certain amount of time. Like if CIA or the FBI or whatever police force or whatever was trying to track a call, they had to be on the line for a certain period of time.
And I think that had to do with backtracking the number of analog switches, through all the various switching stations back to the original area, and then the actual number. I think that's how that worked.
Yeah. So it could be that, or it could be this is the only amount of time that the juice in the battery that's letting this voice talk for is a specific amount of time, and then it has to call back. And then another thing that Spin Beans just brought up was the dark side of the moon. Right? I don't know what that means. The sun will rise on the dark side of the moon. I don't really understand how that's relevant to the conversation that he's having with Gary, other than the previous conversation when they were talking about keep your eyes on the skies near Orion. And then also in this call is it's essentially saying we would like to be like contacted just as much as like you would like to be contacted, which is interesting.
And it's odd that it stopped right here. To my knowledge, there's no further contact. There's no further phone calls. It just sort of ends right there. Now, I've pulled practical jokes on people, and once you get the hook set, half of the fun is seeing how long you can string, your poor victim along. So if this was a practical joke, I would think that I would want to continue doing this. And if this was a harassment campaign, by somebody just screwing with the Sudbrinks, why would you only make 3 phone calls in one night and then 1 phone call the next night and stop? Why wouldn't you randomize it? Every third week, do 3 phone calls and then wait 2 weeks and do 1, and then to keep them unnerved. Why would it stop just then? So it just doesn't really follow the pattern of harassment. And something else is, if you could tell, and I'm not casting aspersions, don't hear what I'm not saying, but the Sudbrink family have very distinctive New England, specifically New York accents, very distinctive Long Island accents. And the voice has a very bland, almost a Midwestern accent or lack thereof an accent. It's very, the tonality is very bland. The syntax is very bland. The enunciation is very bland. So if it was somebody, screwing around with Gary from, the Long Island area, you would think that likewise that you could detect a tiny bit, perhaps, of a Long Island accent, but, I could hear none.
It's almost like an electronic style, voice that is like mixed with like, what you're meaning, like a sort of like a not fully complete style of accent. Yeah, it's really strange. It's really weird. And I didn't really know what to think about this. I mean, the consensus that I found on it from, skeptics is that it's a prank, that it's a prank call, is from his brother, Steven, or one of his friends. But that doesn't really make a lot of sense either. Like, the whole point of a prank is to let people know at some point that it's a prank.
Right.
Right. If I were to like prank you and I was to do something, then eventually I'm going to tell you, hey, Trey.
Yeah, I really got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of it being a prank, is that you let somebody know later on that it's a prank.
Yeah, it's like I pulled a prank on a Bigfoot expedition. I was probably kind of naughty. Is I was in Florida and we had a pile behind our latrine where we dug the hole, and I found a cow bone, big cow bone, and I stuck it straight up in that pile of dirt behind the latrine. And people were like, oh, Bigfoot's leaving a signal and it's a sign and all of that. And I just sat back and let it go for a while.
Yeah.
Then eventually I fessed up and I'm like, yeah, I got you all. Everybody was, so excited about the bone and the shit dirt, I just had to let it go. But yeah, you're right. Half the fun is seeing how far you can go, and then, basically outing yourself and, watching the people's reactions, as they sheepishly, admit that, they were in fact fooled. But I am looking here for some of the things. I had a really weird, almost, intuition, is when they were talking about, the dark side of the moon, the sun will rise on the dark side of the moon. Watch Orion. We come to be within this planet, to visit the many, to be contacted as with the same. I got this really weird feeling that made me think of the Toynbee tiles. And I don't know if you're familiar with those. That's another very bizarre story. The Toynbee tiles started in 1983 in Baltimore, and they basically were linoleum tiles that were laid on the street and were pressed into the asphalt. And they said, Toynbee idea in movie 2001, Resurrect Dead on Planet Jupiter. And there was a fellow by the name of Arnold J. Toynbee that, and I'm trying to remember this from memory, is he believed that the dead could be resurrected if they were sent to the moon or sent to Jupiter. And that was kind of about, what the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey was, is a resurrection of, human consciousness, on Jupiter. So for some reason, I got this real weird Toynbee tile kind of vibe from, that particular exchange.
I'm gonna have to look into that. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of the Toynbee tile.
Yeah, it's a weird story. They've eventually popped up all over the world, and I think they've eventually died off. No, I can see the wheels turning.
Yes, that's really interesting. So, but then how does that relate to what the supposed alien or extraterrestrial was talking about? I mean, does it have any connection to like this doppelganger stuff? Like
Yeah.
him?
No, not directly. I just kind of picked up a gestalt, in my own mind. It kind of reminded me of the Toynbee tiles. But the emphasis on the dark side of the moon made me also remember in the movie, in the book, 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur Clarke, is the finding and discovery of the monolith on the moon, which was, basically the big switch that was turned on to allow the communication with the others, later on in the movie, which brought about a whole new understanding of our place in the universe later on in the film.
That's really strange.
But
that makes sense.
Yeah. But before I forget, I had one of these phone calls similar to this, and I just want to throw it out there before I forget. I had just started doing a lot of work in instrumental transcommunications, specifically using allophones, which are the individual segments of human language, of all language. And I had a allophone generator that would randomly generate these tones, and I would ask questions and then randomly generate these tones to see if I could get a response. And I had some luck with that. And so about the time I was doing these experiments, it was probably about 1:00 at night. And this was back in the, probably about 2007, we still had landline phones, and the phone rang, and I picked it up, and on the other end, there was a mechanical synthetic voice. And the only thing the voice said was "gates of hell," and said nothing else, and then hung up. But it was like I said, this, when I hear these, these Sudbrink tapes, it kind of, gives me a shiver, because it was very similar to the voice I heard.
Did you have that recorded?
Oh, I did not. I was doing good to kind of figure out who or what I was, at 1:00 in the morning. Because, the old adage, phone calls at night are usually bad news,
Yeah.
So, that was kind of the first thing that popped through my mind is, oh my God, what's happened? Is somebody ill, injured, hurt, or whatever? And that was absolutely the last thing I expected to hear, was a mechanical voice saying "gates of hell," especially after I had just started doing more research and experimentation into instrumental transcommunication.
So to wrap this up, Trey, what is your consensus on these the Sudbrink phone calls? Do you think that they're real? Do you think that they're legitimate? Do you think that they're fake? Do you think that they were a prank, or was it a combination of the two?
Yeah, it's kind of like when you look at a UFO and it's an unidentified flying object, something we can't identify. I think it's the same thing with these. I do not think Gary Sudbrink was in on if it was a prank. Let me back up. I don't think Gary Sudbrink had anything to do with the generation or transmitting of these phone calls. I think he was literally just somebody that picked up the phone, and there it was. I don't think the Sudbrink family was part of it. The fact that whoever or whatever it was knew that he was in Long Island when he never notified anybody, when he just had a 4-day pass and decided to zip up there real quick and see his family, I find very interesting. So that makes me think it would not be anybody from San Antonio that he worked with, because they wouldn't know where he was. He just was, he wasn't at work that weekend, that 4-day weekend, and, they didn't know where he was. So what is it? You tie this in with the doppelganger, that Gary's brother Steven saw, prior to the wedding, in the year previous, and then with his friend Mike receiving the phone call from another Gary, and then you tie it in with very typical Men in Black kind of encounters. The person at the airline gate asking him all these questions, putting him at ill ease, writing down his responses, in a notebook. In the Mothman Prophecies, there's Keel talks about some Men in Black actually literally having spiral bound notebooks like Gary's interrogator did at the airport, and then having this another interrogator sit next to him without authorization, but sit next to him on the airplane and start asking some of the same similar questions. So you take all of this in whole. I think it's a phone call from somewhere else that might not be where we are at currently. Somewhere else in the universe.
It very well could be. It's a very interesting call, and I have to agree with your analysis. And for one, one time we found one that we couldn't really explain. I think it truly is kind of unexplained. I'll have to try and look into some more of these cases and the mysterious phone call cases, and look more into Long Island and exactly what all was going on there, because this is really fascinating to me. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah. And, it's a phenomenon that's been, going on, at least in the paranormal world, phone calls from the dead. And it's even so ingrained in our psyche using instrumentation as there's things called windophones, which are basically, just phones set up in remote locations that aren't hooked up to anything, that people that are undergoing grief can pick it up and speak to the phone as though they were speaking to their departed loved one to help them work through the grief. So there's something very, very basic, very primal about being able to, use a piece of equipment to speak to the other side, be that extraterrestrial or the afterlife.
Absolutely. And if people are interested, they can go to Bedtime Stories YouTube channel and listen to the full breakdown of the Sudbrink phone calls. It has the clips that we've shown in here. It's 48 minutes and 3 seconds long if people are interested. And Trey, you're writing a new book. You've been you've been teasing this new book for a long time.
Yeah, I have. I hate to say it, I'm a lazy writer. I really have to struggle with it, but I have about 56,000 words in the can. I've sent it to the publisher. He's looking at it. I've done the author's proof. So, if the publisher, picks it up, which he pretty much said he will, the next step is editing, and then we hope to release it, within the next few months. And something else, and I think I told you what this actually is, but I can't go public with it. But there's something else really cool, literally right in the chute, and I'm hoping to get something out here pretty soon on that. It'll be kind of cool too.
Are you going to title it The Meadow Part 2?
It is Return to the Meadow, Further Adventures at the South Skinwalker Ranch. And there are some really cool things in there.
I would actually like to get you and Katie on on the same show sometime soon.
Yeah. She's been to the Meadow, and I've been out to the Colorado Ranch, and we've had some adventures together. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, talk about that really quickly before I let you go. You going out to the Clearview Ranch? What was that like?
It was we didn't have a lot of time to spend there, but we did have a few hours. We got permission from the current owner, and we did go to the actual area where she talked about the burned off area where nothing would grow. I went to that area. I went to the cistern. Of course, I had my photograph posing jauntily at the cistern. And also we went to the area where they encountered the box in the woods. Now, the kind of cool thing about that box area is as soon as I got there, the environment felt different. And people that have been to areas of high strangeness will talk about, they'll go to an area where this weird stuff has happened and the air feels charged. That's kind of it's a nebulous description, but it's kind of a rough way of articulating what you feel. The air felt different. It felt a little bit more alive right there at the location, where she had experienced the box when they were out driving in the woods. So it is a really cool place. I hope to get out there some more in the future and really, bring some of my, my equipment and some of the techniques I use to bear on it.
Absolutely. I found what she talked about very credible. I liked her a lot. She seemed like a very well-rounded individual and seemed very honest and was open to all different kinds of explanations, which is
Yeah.
very rare with some sort of a lot of experiencers, right? They're not really open to what other people have to say that it could be. You know, they're more reserved and like closed off. They think that whatever it is that they experienced was exactly what they
Right.
experienced. And 9 times out of 10, it's never really what they experience.
Right.
So, you know, I definitely commend her for that. But I'd definitely like to have both of you on. Let people know where they can find you. Plug your book that you currently have out, and let people know.
Yeah, the current book is back in print. The Meadow Project Explorations at the South Skinwalker Ranch. That's book number 1. It's currently out. You can find that on Amazon. You know, just type in Trey Hudson, and it comes up, and it's in a bunch of different languages. If you sprechen Sie Deutsch or whatever. And but we've got a problem with the copyright on the audio book, so I'm trying to get that figured out with lawyers and stuff. So I'm sorry about that. The second book will also be launched on Amazon. You can find me at Trey Hudson-author on Facebook, and TreyHudsonResearch.com is my website, and TreyHudson.research@gmail.com is my email address.
Thanks so much, Trey. Really appreciate your time. Always fascinating and amazing to talk with you about these weird and strange things. And I'm glad we found one that's kind of quasi unexplained. But I'm looking forward to the next one because I'm sure I'll find something else really weird and strange. But thanks everyone for being here. Thanks everyone in the chat. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel out in the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.